Is Granblue Fantasy Relink going to be gacha or pay to win? Let's go through everything we know about the monetization, as well as going over what's expected for its post-launch support, and let you know what our opinion is on it. Is Granblue Fantasy Relink a win or a fat L? Stick around to the end to find out. One of the most common questions we get asked about this in our videos is this game a gacha? Because Granblue Fantasy Relink has all of the markings of a traditional gacha game with a ton of characters in the roster, and with the franchise growing to popularity from its original mobile game. The developers definitely haven't been all that vocal on the monetization aspect of this title, but there are a few tidbits in various interviews, so with them together we can get some answers. Most recently, in an interview with RPG Site, we got some details about how characters are unlocked, as the interviewer asked, "In the Anime Expo 2023 presentation for Granblue Fantasy Relink, Cygames mentioned that players can progress the story to recruit more party members in whatever order they liked. Can you elaborate on this? Will players be able to choose from a list of different destinations, and will each destination's difficulty level change based on when players decide to visit them?" Fukuhara replied, "It's a little more simple than going to a destination and unlocking a character by completing a story beat. Actually, it's not progressing the story that unlocks the character. By progressing the story, you will receive items throughout the story that will allow you to unlock a character from a facility in the base area. That's what we meant by unlocking characters in whatever order you'd like. You'll receive an item and then use that item to unlock your preferred character. You'll just get items, that same item, to do multiple times throughout the story. So with that information, it seems like we will at least at a minimum be able to unlock some of the characters through gameplay. However, it doesn't look like Cygames is treating Granblue Fantasy Relink as a live service game in the same way that something like Honkai Star Rail or Genshin Impact are, as here's what they've said in the game interview when the interviewer asked, "Will Granblue Fantasy Relink be a live service game? Does it have daily and/or weekly activities for players to work towards, and will there be some sort of battle pass? Does it require an internet connection to play?" Fukuhara says, "The game is not a live service game. As far as dailies and weeklies are concerned, there's not really anything like that in the game. If you progress into the later stages, there's a bonus system for playing the game, but there's not any sort of system set up where you're going to really hurt yourself by missing days of play. There's nothing that requires you to come back and play every day, and there also won't be any battle passes. It can also be played offline." We know this is going to be awesome news for some of you out there, especially the no battle pass part, as it seems that the development team are treating the game as a self-contained game and RPG, similar to something like Tales of Arise or Final Fantasy VII Remake. But it does beg the question about if they'll be adding more characters in the future. With the Granblue franchise having so many different characters to pull from, it would almost be a disservice if Cygames doesn't add more characters into the game. And in the same interview, the interviewer actually asked about this by saying, "Are there plans to add new playable characters and stages in content updates after Granblue Fantasy Relink launches?" Fukuhara says, "As for what we can talk about right now, we would like to mention that the story of the game does wrap up neatly. It is not a cliffhanger. As far as updating the story after it releases, it is already a full story. But for people who completed the story and they've gotten a lot out of the game already, we will be releasing endgame content, the really difficult stuff for players to play through as well. It's still quite a bit off for the release date of the game, so we have nothing else to add at this time." Interestingly, while it does sound like there will be some additional endgame content for us to experience, they didn't mention anything about new characters coming. However, it could just be that they aren't ready to talk about any character DLC stuff just yet, as I've gone through many different articles and interviews with them all saying they will talk about this at a later date. But what does the Arix Gaming team think about this? Speaking for myself, Paradise, I can say games that have launched recently, and I'll use Hogwarts Legacy as an example, being a full complete package with no microtransactions and just an overall well-delivered, fully complete and promised game, is something that I absolutely love and crave, especially in the gaming scene at the moment. And with the success of Hogwarts Legacy, I think it's a perfect example that if you market and sell a complete, concise game with no extra add-ons to pay for or things removed from the game that you then have to pay to add back in, the success of a game like this shows that people appreciate it. So I for one am very happy to play a game like this in this style, but without those layers of energy, gacha and other monetization, at least from what we know so far. Meanwhile, 269 says he's very happy that it isn't going to be a gacha game and that we can just unlock everything through playing the game with no energy, monetary or game time blockers. 26 finds he usually doesn't enjoy gacha games for this reason, as it feels that whenever you play them and you're just about to get good with making character progression, you end up being locked out. Having to come back and play every day just to do dailies is something that makes the game feel more like a chore and the progression more artificial. With that being said though, Relink has all the bells and whistles of a game that could have a ton of longevity if you add a bunch of post-launch support in there via endgame content, more characters and weapons. So hopefully, even though it seems like it's a fully self-contained game, if they are thinking about this, especially if they intend to add multiplayer into the game, an update with new characters, bosses and weapons, similar to how Monster Hunter World did it, would suit 26 just fine. But do tell us what you think about all of this down below.